This is the big one, the one that you've all been waiting for. Magical Mystery Cure. First things first, let's go over my ground rules. Rule 1 has always been that songs do not affect my overall rankings of an episode. That's technically inaccurate. How much I like the songs do not affect the ranking, but what happens during the songs does. For example, I really like the Smile song, but I don't really like the Find a Pet song. However, since they both have little to do with anything, they would count as a strike against their respective episode. A lot of people hate this episode because they don't like the songs, and while that gives you license to do so, it's a little unfair to call it a bad episode, since you personally don't like them, since music is subjective. In fact, to prove my point, I'm not even going to tell you what I think of the songs, for 2 reasons. 1, we'll be here forever, and 2, to prove that music has absolutely nothing to do with my review. Rule 2 is that changes to the show dynamic doesn't affect my overall rankings. So if a character suddenly sprouts wings and gains a new social standing, that fact alone will not bias my rating. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but if it does happen, you know the drill. Spoilers, by the way. The fact that this is a musical episode doesn't bias me either. 5 points on the board, let's begin. Speaking of musicals, this episode starts right out of the gate with the establishing musical number. A lot of people complained that Pinkie Pie just ramming into Twilight and too many Pinkie Pies started the plot too quickly, and then they turned around and complained that this episode is actually taking its time to establish things correctly. It's not blindsiding us with the plot. Instead, it blindsides Twilight with the plot when she says that Rarity has Rainbow's cutie mark, and she's controlling the weather. Let's think about this really hard. I said that just for sidekicks, expected you to have watched Secret of My Excess and actually understood it completely. This episode does something similar, except instead of one episode, it's every single one. Starting with Call of the Cutie and the Cutie Mark Chronicles. We learn that each of the main 6, except for Twilight, have had their cutie marks swapped. Rarity has Rainbows, Rainbow has Fluttershy's, Pinkie has Applejacks, and Applejack has Rarities. Not only do they think that this is their talent, they also think that this is what they've been doing for all their life. And M.A. Larson swapped their cutie marks in just the right way to make sure that they would all be miserable. Rarity is making weather patterns that go unappreciated by every pony. Rainbow's taking care of animals, which requires her to be still and actually take some level of abuse. Fluttershy, who hates attention, is forcing herself to be laughed at. Pinkie Pie hated her life on the rock farm, since it wasn't really fun. And Applejack values practicality over aesthetic design. Of course, this looks like a problem, doesn't it? Rainbow's talent is not manipulating the weather, and Rarity's talent is not being a fashion designer. We already know that it would be impossible for Rarity to fly and create a sonic rainboom, as it would be impossible for Applejack to cast a gem-finding spell on purpose or by accident. On the surface, it looks like M.A. Larson wrote himself into a corner, until you realize that their memories were also altered. Let's take a look at Call of the Cutie.
Decided to become a teacher. The flowers symbolized my hope that I could help my future students bloom. Smiles represented the cheer I hoped to bring to my little ponies.
That's a little bit of a stretch, don't you think? Flowers equals be a teacher. I could say that a colorful rainbow pattern means making the skies beautiful. Cutie marks have always been interpretable. You get them after you figure out what you want to do, not the other way around. By the way, there is enough humor in that song in order to get a point. Also, I should get this out of the way now because I don't care what you say. This is the best animated episode of the entire show. Even if nothing else makes sense, this episode is still beautiful to look at. Twilight realizes that she's screwed up, badly. She got a letter from the princess that contained Star Swirl's unfinished masterpiece, and Celestia believed that Twilight would be the only one who could finish it. Twilight starts by reading it out loud. What? Reading something in a book? No, it's probably the first thing that Twilight would do. And since the spell is unfinished, she accidentally casts it, which screwed up her friends' lives because they were the bearers of the elements of harmony. Twilight because she cast the spell and Spike...
I'm a dragon.
Yeah, that's the best explanation I could find. Someone somewhere has to make them. Magic just doesn't come forth from the ground. Yes, we have. Hell if I know. Because it's reasonable we don't know that. We don't know where the elements of harmony came from, nor do we know their true nature. Star Swirl could have created them himself for all we know. And if I predicted that right, you each owe me a chocolate chip cookie.
I cast the spell so I could find out what it was.
Isn't sending the entire town into a frenzy over a doll? Twilight's not perfect, and if anything outweighs her obsession over the future, it's her curiosity. And if I know anything about Twilight, it's that her intelligence goes down when she gets tired. Looking at both It's About Time and Look Before You Sleep. According to Star Swirl's book, there's no way to undo the incomplete first spell. Spike says that Twilight should just restore their memories like she did when Discord was around.
It's not their memories, Spike. It's their true selves that have been altered.
First of all, how the hell do you know? Let's think about this really really hard. Perhaps the spell changed more than their memories, but their past. Like, it actually changed their past. They don't just remember getting these cutie marks, they actually got them. And the spell just changed the nature of how they got them.
That makes sense, right?
Actually, yeah, it kinda does. It would make them want to live out these lives, especially with their world telling them that cutie marks are supposed to dictate what you do. It all makes sense now. Twilight feels totally crushed that she essentially ruined her friend's life, and so we get a really, really sad song. Why do people say that this song is pointless? First of all, yes, this episode has wonky pacing, and once again I'll count the strike here. I deduct more points if any scenes or time was wasted. This song lasts 1 minute and 6 seconds. Can anyone please tell me how all the pacing problems in this episode could be fixed in 1 minute and 6 seconds? Now, I say the song is not pointless because it uses something called emotional juxtaposition. The last scene was supposed to be really funny, and this one is really sad. Putting them next to each other makes the emotional jump bigger and more powerful. It also shows us the true gravity of the situation. We aren't laughing anymore. In fact, we feel kind of bad for laughing in the first place. And unlike Double Rainbow's use of this, it was actually intentional to make us feel even worse for the characters. Spike reassures Twilight and tells her that these are her friends they're dealing with. And, hey, it's that thing from the Thing! You know the Thing? And this somehow teaches Twilight what she has to do, making her glow, and that lets her know what she has to do. Let's think really hard about this. Yeah, I got nothing. I understand that she's got an idea, but I don't understand why it made her eyes spark like when she first realized the main six were her friends. Wait a minute, I think I got this one. Once again, after doubt, Twilight realized how powerful friendship was and how it could overcome any adversary, like done twice before. Once in Friendship is Magic, and once in The Return of Harmony. Got it! Twilight runs into Fluttershy, who's thinking about returning to Cloudsdale, which means that she must have been really unhappy with her life. Twilight convinces her to help out Rainbow Dash, and just in time too, since the animals are cooking her. And I thought the animals treated Fluttershy badly. Jeez, no wonder she's so tough. Fluttershy helps and stops the animals from going crazy. The animals seem to love her, and she realizes that this is her destiny. And only once her element of harmony is placed on... What the fuck? Seriously, what's up with that? Every time I watch this episode, I expect coins to start spraying forth from their nose or something. I suppose they didn't want to repeat the change from The Return of Harmony, but this seriously looks a bit weird. They start singing a new song, and...
Hello? Friend trapped inside, remember?
Okay, that's pretty funny. The main six go wandering around, turning their friends back to normal and undoing the spell that was cast.
I want to see you smile!
Wait a minute, the crowd wasn't affected by the spell, and they were just that miserable without Pinkie? Yep, I'm giving the point back for wrongly thinking that only Twilight and Spike were unaffected by the spell. By the way, can any pony tell me what the hell a hand is? Or for that matter, what the hell is a townsperson? One thing I don't get though is why the apples didn't stop Pinkie from destroying the farm, but they did help Applejack restore it. Unless Pinkie trapped them somewhere. She definitely looked pretty intimidating when attacking that water chute, so I'm going with that. Pinkie trapped them in the basement of Sweet Apple Acres when they tried to stop her from living out her destiny. But yes, I will concede that that probably should have been addressed. This song helps Twilight realize what was missing from Star Swirl's spell, and the magic of friendship helps her do what Star Swirl was never able to do. As soon as she finishes the spell, the elements of harmony activate, and start shooting lasers at her. Then Twilight disintegrates, leaving a singe shaped like her cutie mark on the ground. What if I told you the episode ended just like that? Because if this story was a two-parter, this would be the most logical place to end it, with Twilight seemingly dead. I don't think that would make very many people happy. But let's talk about this one moment here, shall we? When I first watched this episode, it was like 9 in the morning during the original air date, so I wasn't fully awake, and I kinda laughed. Pinkie's expression there, you know? But if I was more lucid, it would probably be the bird times it like a million. On a more serious note, Twilight smiles before she gets blown to Kingdom Come. That's not a look of fear or defeat, that's a look of acceptance. Either she knows what's about to happen, or she's okay with the inevitable. Twilight awakens in the Celestial Plane, or perhaps the Twilight Zone, where she meets Princess Celestia. She starts singing a song where she claims that Twilight is now ready to move on to the next level of her studies. They walk down a hall showing scenes from previous episodes of the show. And no, I'm not making that joke because it's not funny anymore. You know the term breaking the fourth wall? This episode does it a lot, but not for laughs. Have you seen Twilight come such a long, long way?
And I've watched you from that very first day.
Have you watched her from that very first day?
To see how you might grow.
Have you seen how she's grown?
To see what you might do.
Have you wondered what she might do?
To see what you've been through.
Have you seen what she's been through?
And all the ways you've made me proud of you.
Now here's a question. Are you proud of Twilight? Are you proud of watching her overcome each of her own trials? Is she really enough of a character for you to feel this for her? I'm not saying that in a condescending way either. That's the intent of the song. In fact, that's the intent of the whole episode. I gotta admit, most media will only try to make you feel happy or sad for a character. This episode actually goes out to try to make you feel proud for a character. I've gotta give them credit where credit is due. From Twilight's heart, and not her horn, comes magic that swirls around her, turning her into an alicorn. Okay, we got a lot to talk about, so buckle up. Let's start with the moral. The first part of the episode says that you shouldn't just blindly accept destiny, and here Twilight is just given these wings and a crown. It sounds contradictory and hypocritical. Let's think really hard about this. I mean, really hard. I argue that this actually makes the moral complete. The first part of the episode shows that you shouldn't blindly follow destiny. This part shows that you shouldn't just blindly refuse destiny either. Sometimes following someone else's course in life can lead you to happiness, and sometimes it can't. Only you can really be the judge of that, but friends can help you realize this. Okay, let's talk about Princess Alicorn Twilight Sparkle. You start. No, seriously, what do you expect me to say about it? That I love the idea or that I hate the idea? I don't love or hate it. I can't until I actually know what they're going to do with it. So, you start. I just don't get that complaint at all. Ameri Sue is a perfect character with no personality or flaws to speak of. First of all,
What do I do now? Is there a book about being a princess I should read?
she's still our same old Twilight. Secondly, the only power she gained is the ability to fly, a power that she never needed in the past. Yeah, because the wings totally did that, and alicorns don't get the shit beat out of them. Here's the way I see it. Either she is ready, and the almighty Celestia's trust was well placed after watching everything that Twilight did for the past whenever, or the show is going to get very interesting. To answer that question, let's take a look at Lesson 0, for 2 reasons. Number 1, that it's really funny to overlay Celestia's ballad, and 2, in that episode she sent the entire town into a frenzy, and herself nearly into madness, just to be with her friends. Because getting wings stops Twilight from using magic.
We would have a royal wedding, befitting a princess, which is what I would become upon marrying him.
Yes, but it's a made-up term and they can call it whatever the hell they want. That's an alicorn in my fantasy novel. I can tell you that they're at least happy for Twilight, and that's before they find out that she's a princess. And Twilight's opinion of her friends hasn't changed in the slightest. If they did this to stay fresh, sure, but they didn't. It was a corporate mandate. You know, like Rarity.
Hold on a second!
Okay, that was pretty funny. I don't often laugh at spit takes, but that was pretty good. And no, I'm not expecting them to explain everything now, because as Celestia says,
There will be time for all of that later.
this is apparently part 1 of a 3-parter. Or a 6-parter if you count Equestria Girls. So, in Canterlot, they give Twilight her coronation. Jeez, imagine what they're going through. One's married to a princess, and the other is a princess. Why do people say this coronation goes on forever? The coronation itself is 3 minutes long, and the whole Alicorn plotline is about 5. Twilight starts giving a speech to the crowd that seems to be recapping the entire series until this point.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest pony in Equestria.
Yeah, because she doesn't want to be a princess. In fact, come to think of it, I think that Twilight is the first character ever to actually earn being a princess. Shining Armor is definitely proud of her. We end off with a reprise of the first song, which is once again talking to the audience.
Everything's gonna be just fine.
Yes, I'm deducting 1 point for her flying into the camera, but I wouldn't worry about it.
Everything's gonna be just fine.
Of course it is. I don't know why people were running around panicking like crazy when this was first announced. Let's get the obvious out of the way. This is a finale on multiple levels. If it was just a typical episode, the leaps of logic I needed to take to other episodes would have been inexcusable. But being a finale, it is allowed to demand that its audience has been along since the beginning. There's a reason I didn't just critique this episode first, and that's more than just my own skills improving since my first review. I mean, I've looked deep into each and every episode to the point where I'm noticing animation errors left and right, and by now I know each episode by the back of my hand. Everything in this episode makes complete sense to me. Let's talk about the pacing, the one major flaw of this episode. Things go by way too quickly because as established, the show does not use transitions. It doesn't really bother me. After all, I'd rather have too much going on than not enough. If I missed anything, I would just watch it again. In fact, when I usually do that, my opinion of an episode lowers. This is the first time my opinion of an episode has actually risen while reviewing it. It took me 4 hours to write the script for this review. Not even the script for my Equestria Girls review took that long to write. Each time I said, let's think about this, I really did. And it was then I realized that these huge leaps of logic that didn't make much sense were actually a lot closer than I thought. I may not have worded everything perfectly, but at no point was I talking out of my ass. I used as much continuity and as much logic as possible all the way through. Even with my perceived logical problems, I used to think this episode was still pretty good, but now that I realize how much effort was put into getting all of the continuity as right as possible, I appreciate it much, much more. So why do people hate this episode so much? Simple. Did you want to hate this episode? If you did, then you do. It's that simple. I don't know anyone's opinions who were changed by the episode itself. It runs on emotion, and if you tuned yourself out of that, then you're not going to be very impressed with the episode. Ah yes, emotion, the word of the day. Yeah, I won't deny that this episode made me emotional. Like I said, it was designed to make you feel proud of Twilight. Not accepting that she became an alicorn, but actually proud for her. And yes, it did succeed in what it wanted to do, at least with me. Wow, I am proud that a purple unicorn pony became a princess. This is an odd decade for me. I feel like I'm being trolled. Emma Larson and Daniel Ingram are trolling me. The songs I don't need to vouch for. This episode's soundtrack won a Leo Award. Not nominated, actually won. This episode probably contains my two favorite songs from the show to date. Celestia's Ballad, which is just beautiful, and A True True Friend, which perfectly sums up the themes of the entire show. Also, musical numbers are used to put in a lot of information into a small amount of space. With one, you can cram 100 years into 3 minutes. Without musical numbers, this episode would be inarguably worse. Even if you hated every single song in this episode, it still would have been worse, with them cutting out needed exposition. By the way, I'm tired of people calling this episode bad just because they don't like the songs. Please stop doing that. All you're doing is making your arguments invalid, because like I said at the beginning, music is subjective, which is part of the reason why I take songs completely out of the equation when I review an episode. Also, unlike the CG Timberwolves or the simultaneous stories, this didn't just feel like an experiment. You know, the staff just doing something to prove that they could. This was necessary. And to the haters, don't be surprised if they do it again. Speaking of which, don't be surprised if another character eventually undergoes a life-altering change. Very rarely do shows do something like this, because people hate change. People hate change because all too often does it turn out wrong and horrid. This show is now in a unique position, one where they can teach people that change isn't always bad, and sometimes it should be embraced. In fact, they almost don't have a choice anymore. They've given us the change. Let's see how they deal with it.
It's time now for a new change to come. You've grown up and your new life has begun to go